Blessed love, I am the Honorable Priest Isaac. I am an official priest within the realms of Rastafari of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress. I also hold a certification in the craft of archaeoastronomy from Politecnico di Milano in Italy. Our universe and its makeup has always been an intriguing subject for humankind. Astronomy is the study of everything in the universe beyond the Earth's atmosphere. Ancient astronomy is similar, but pays special attention to the physical and spiritual values of stars, planets, moons, and other celestial objects. It also brings in the terrestrial component, being things on an earthly plane, such as plants, human organs, and connects them to the heavenly bodies. In this course, you will learn the makeup of various planets and stars, how to locate them in the night sky, along with their associated constellations. You will also be taught about the earliest civilizations known for their astronomical comprehension, namely Kush, also known as ancient Ethiopia, Kemet, called Egypt today, the Dogons, and the Bozos, as well as the civilization of Sumer. You will also learn about black holes, their nature and origin, as well as how the ancients viewed them. Ancient astronomy is the mother of archaeoastronomy and astrotheology. Both subject areas are covered by the Priest Isaac's Institute of Holistic Knowledge. Sign up today. Visit our website, priestisaacinstitute.com, or email us, priestisaacinstitute@gmail.com, for more information. We say blessed love to each and every one. Of course, we glorify Haile Selassie the First, Negus and Agas, life giver and the keeper of life. Royal family, I'm very honored to be in your presence once again. You've definitely stepped into the Tiger's Temple. Honorable Priest Isaac here with you, bringing joy, happiness, and of course, you know, it is just wonderful meditation when we come and we sit down. Now, today, I want to speak about the realistic crucifixion of Christ. Now, just the nature of the subject. Obviously, it's going to come with many different layers. But listen, family, you're going to have to take your time with me tonight. You're going to have to make sure you have all you need to stay comfortable, whether it's your snacks or your meditation. This ain't no quickie and no run through the wall and let's get it over. No, this is a meditational program that I'm bringing to you this evening. We want to talk about the real Christ and what the real crucifixion is all about, not the fiction now. We want to talk about the Messiah that went into the underworld historically. I'm talking about geopolitically sound. Of course, Emperor Haile Selassie the First is who we speak of. And listen, with all the love in the world, this is not the time for me to be debating anyone. To be honest, I'm somewhat surprised the way I see people jumping out of the mole holes, trying to throw stones and run away, and leaving some funny comments and this and that about Haile Selassie and the knowledge and the information that we bring to the forefront. Now, family, I mean, we would have come right here and we would have said to anyone, let me make this clear before we go any further. We have an open door policy here. Yes, we do vet you, But of course, I'm telling you, it's not that hard to come and sit with me. I would sit back like I'm in the audience and I would give you the floor to speak to the people and tell them what it is that you disagree with the philosophy that you may hear us bring to the table. And many times, we're just speaking knowledge, many times it's just information. Some of the things we're just sharing it with the people. It's not our mantra, it's not our standing principle, it's just information. But we are so ready to get defensive. But let me be clear. When it comes to the divinity of Emperor Haile Selassie I, all of those who trying to diss the King of Kings, let me be clear, if it's one thing, John Henry Clarke said it perfectly. I didn't come to debate those who are inferior to me. That's what John Henry Clarke said. And it's not about being, pompous or anything. But when it comes to Emperor Haile Selassie I, well, then I get no boaster than this. When it comes to Negus and Nagas, well, we are on the front line when it comes to defending the divinity and, listen to me good, and the true history of Emperor Haile Selassie I. Now, family, I want to go straight into it. Everyone listening knows about the story of the crucifixion of Christ. When people talk about the Jesus Christ character and he was crucified and he bore 5 bleeding wounds and he was sent into the underworld for 3 days and 3 nights, and then he resurrected and ascended and sat on the right hand of the Father, and because of all of this, mankind was saved. Now, that is just an allegorical story, and it didn't begin with the invention of Serapis that morphed into Jesus Christ. No, this is an ancient understanding. In fact, this can be seen in the heavens itself. The whole celestial movements, even the simple setting of the sun and the rising of the sun in the morning is the same as the resurrection and the rebirth of the Messiah. Because rebirth or resurrection is also reincarnation. That is very, very important for you to keep in mind as well. Now, when we look into the midst of all of this, this is very important. The heavens declare the glory of the Most High. And as I said, when you observe the heavens, without a doubt, no one can deny that the heavens is the first book. This is why the 19th Psalm says that the firmament showeth his handiwork. Now the thing is, day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. All of the holy books that you have, royal family, whether it is the Bible, whether it is the Quran, whether it is the Veda, any of these holy books, holy itself means the sun, holiest means the solar being, the solar arm. So the point is that all of these books were taken from the original book, which is the firmaments, not just the sun, the stars, the constellations, the planets, and not just them in a static formation, but the living heavens, the rising of the stars, the rising of the moon, your lunar year, your sidereal year, your solar year, and how they interact with each other. This is how the wise ones would have sat and observed the ancient astronomy, what people try to mix up with astrology today. And they would have taken their pens and their scrolls and papyri and of course the glyphs, and they would have created the stories so that we on this level could comprehend the movements of the heavens. And this is why when we went into the temple of Hathor at Dendara, what did we see? We saw the heavens on the ceiling. We saw the constellations in their formation from the Virgin to the Lion, right in ancient Kemet. You understand? The zodiac belt. You see Virgo, the Virgin. And of course, you see the scale. And you also see the Scorpion. You understand? You also see Sagittarius ready to strike the Scorpion as well. All of this is on the ceiling in ancient Kemet. at the temple of Hathor at the place called Dendara. Now, the heavens declaring the glory of God is an ancient thing. It was even before the psalmist wrote that. That is why the ancient pyramids are aligned with the Orion's belt, because the heavens declare the glory. And this is why not just aligned with Orion's belt, but beginning what is known as the Fibonacci series of number, the golden spiral, the pyramids in its formation with its curvature, literally begins the golden spiral that created all living things. So it's obvious we had a serious sense and understanding and comprehension of creation, where we could have created the largest of monuments that was still perfectly aligned with a million and different aspects of nature. Yeah. So I'm showing you now from the heavens, we understood the movements of the sun and the moon. And again, we saw how it connected to life in general. This is what religion is all about, This is what the Christ and the Anansi story is all about. It's a reflection of nature. It's a reflection of the universal qualities of existence, or the universal principles. So again, the sun naturally sets, and this is on a kindergarten level. The sun naturally sets. And then in the morning, the sun rises again. Why do you think they call it the sun? Or I should say, why do you think they call him the Son? The Son of God, S-O-N, is the Son of God, S-U-N. Because the sun, the literal sun that rises in the morning and sets in the night, it's a symbol of that coming Messiah. Nobody here worshiping the sun. But the sun, the orb in the heaven, will become a literal human being. But then again, the scripture also says he shall send them not a savior, but saviors. This is why you have the feathered snake concept. What is the feathered snake concept? It's the concept of the flying serpent, the bird and the snake. This is why Tutankhamun carries the bird and the snake on his mitre. This is why Lord Pakal is seen as a feather snake, the Quetzalcoatl, because they're considered to be the living image of the sun, the living image of the cycle of the sun, specifically the 11.5-year sunspot cycle of the sun. You understand? So let's just bring it down now to the level that most of us are accustomed to. But this is where it began. In the cosmos, in the mystics. I know a lot of what I might be saying, maybe just like, wow, wait, slow down, brother. Take your time, one thing at a time. Yeah, but to be honest, we have books on everything I'm talking about. Books, documentaries. I mean, one thing at a time. Yeah, we're moving on now. We're trying to put all of these ancient series and seminars and lectures and documentaries and books and classes and courses, put them together so you comprehend the importance of Haile Selassie I amongst us. Because what is it that is so interesting about the Christ figure now? Is that he, outside of the virgin birth, is that he died for the sins of all man. Now we know that the Christ, or the human being that is referred to as Yeshua or Emmanuel or Jesus, or any name you give, the story of him dying and then literally coming back to life, we know that is not the reality of what the story is all about, the glory. That is not the reality of it. Now, you may argue, well, my brother Simeon Toko died 16 times. I heard you speak of it. Now, listen, hold on. And again, we want to be mature about this. And I'm not here arguing the mystics. And if a man said he went to heaven and come back, or he died and came back, and he can tell you, because I see people being interviewed saying that they went here and there and they're back here now. All right. I'm not arguing with them. That's between them and their maker. I'm talking about a specific story, a specific allegory. You could argue all day long that honeybees can give virgin birth. I don't want to sound offensive, but more than likely you may have heard that from us. We are not denying none of that. But I'm specifically speaking of a certain story, you comprehend, that has been given to us purposely in a falsified way to confuse us. The concept of the Immaculate Conception is before Mary and Jesus. It's an ancient concept. Again, it originated in the heavens. It declares the glory. And the wise ones would have put it in hieroglyph form and on papyri, even before the Bible or even the Christian concept or Abraham or anything came about, just the reality of it. Before Noah built the ark, then, if we want to put dates down, I'm telling you, if we are correct with the dates that we have, the chronology of the world, well, when Adam and Eve was created, that's the exact same time that King Menes of the first dynastic period was uniting Upper and Lower Egypt, 3100 BCE. That's the same time Adam and Eve was created. Around that time, Adam and Eve would have been around 700 years old around that time. I wonder if you follow me good. So obviously that doesn't really balance. But we have learned to comprehend that a lot of what is in the pages of Scripture is highly symbolic. And I would say again, it doesn't take away from any historical aspect of it. Remember, St. Paul said in the New Testament that the story of Abraham and Haggai, Sarah and Ishmael is an allegory. That's what he said in the Bible. He said that story is an allegory. Don't argue with me. Go and talk to St. Paul about that. So it is for you to just carry an understanding. Nobody's throwing the story out of the window. Well, maybe I should say that some people are throwing the story out of the window, but I'm showing you how to balance with understanding. So now the Messiah now, the Yeshua, the Christ figure. Oh, do you believe someone lived 2,000 years ago that was the Christ? Of course. Of course there was a Christ 2,000 years ago. And there was a Christ 2,000 years before that. And 2,000 years before that. It's called a dispensation. It's the movement of the heavens. The zodiac belt is 2,160 years. It never fails. You follow me good? And at the same time now, although I comprehend that the Messiah that carried the title Yeshua, as all of them do, was 2,000 years ago, that doesn't mean I believe he died and came back to life. That doesn't mean I believe he had a mother and he didn't have no genealogical connection to any male figure except the Holy Ghost. No, I don't believe that, not at all. And even the Bible doesn't say that, and the Bible goes contrary to that. It clearly gives you his genealogical family tree, which ends up with his stepfather, supposedly, Joseph. So what is that all about? I hope everyone is blessed. So I'm kind of just sweeping all of that out so that you have a clear meditation as we look at this realistically, understanding that we're dealing with high allegory. That is why even the Messiah said, when Jonah was swallowed by the fish, that was a sign. Now, Jonah wasn't swallowed by no fish. That's a symbolic metaphor for him going into the belly of the beast. The Bible full of that. He went into the belly of the beast. But of course, as Africans, when we express the story, it's not a lie. Oh boy, the Bible lied. No, it's not a lie. Yes, somebody lied, but it's not the Bible. It is the understanding who tried to interpret this stuff for you. We are Africans. That's how we express ourselves with allegory. Yes, we will draw a big fish. We do that all the time and have a man going in the fish. We do that all the time. That's how we tell our Anansi stories. Anansi covered the whole world with a spider web. That's not a European story. That's African. Anansi weave the web to the heavens and climb up to go have a word with God. Nobody make up that from Europe. That's African. But we comprehend, we never taught our children that there was a real spider that did that. In fact, we make sure they understand this is how you tell the story. And the baboon said to the fox. But I mean, come on, we don't enforce that this is exactly what it is. But that's what religion does. So the beautiful allegory that we love, the beautiful metaphor, and even the historic aspect of it has become marred and stained. Because again, yes, um, um, it doesn't take away that there was a Christ. I'm talking about historical human being who they would have taken him and make up Jesus and all of that. 2,000 years ago, that's not hard to believe, as you say, believe. Because that's the cycle of nature. That's the golden spiral. That's the Fibonacci series of numbers. Yeah. Okay. So again, the Messiah figure now. Follow me good. And tiger with me. They say bear with me, tiger with me. You see, the whole concept of the Christ figure is that again, because of who he is, being so refined and perfect, being so pure and clean, he should not bear the cross that he had to bear to save mankind. Now, this is not no religious philosophy I'm going to push on no one here. In fact, we ain't pushing nothing, but what I'm presenting is the clear historical truth as it relates to Haile Selassie I. I was listening to some of my brothers today on the radio station. Officer David and some of the other brothers from the Israel United in Christ, right here in Antigua. They formed a group here. A good brother of mine, he seems to have changed his name or is referring to himself as another name, Officer David, so I wouldn't even call his previous name now. I give people their respect. And they were on the program today on the radio, and they were talking about, you know, the true Israelites and everything. You know how the IUIC drop it. Anyhow, you know them, they drop it, they were dropping it that way. And when they had about 2 more minutes in the program, they were there for an hour and a half, and I was listening. And finally, Brother David, Officer David, said to the brother who came in from the US, so tell him about the Rasta, because a lot of Rastas here. Tell him about the Rasta. And the brother said, no, Rastafari, Rasta wasn't started by Haile Selassie. Rasta was started by Leonard Howell and but anyway, the time is up. We can't speak no more. I say, wow, what kind of move is that, my brother? You wait until the program is done to try to go into all of that. But you see, I'm just saying that for those of you who are really seeking the truth, I know the internet, I know the YouTube, I know this is just like a whole carnival of philosophies and ideas and belief. And if you ain't strong, it'll turn you off. But the truth is just the truth. I see people go for Bible scriptures and try to pinpoint every point. Listen, man, I've been through the Bible how many times? I'm not afraid to say I got a good comprehension of the stories and the characters. I mean, I've read it several times. And I have an understanding of how to crack it open, to milk out the true essence of it. Now, anybody can talk, whatever so-called religion you are. But I'm telling you, when it comes to Haile Selassie I, nobody going nowhere without Haile Selassie. All of them belief and what you believe, and this and that, and who is the Christ, and you're sure, and all this noise that you be making. Trust me. If you ain't got Haile Selassie I in the script, you sink in sand. And I'm going to tell you why. And I really don't want it to sound religious. It may seem as if we're linking it to a religious doctrine. No, we're linking it to an ancient esoteric understanding. Again, before Jesus Christ was crucified, Osiris went into the Amenta. And that was not religion. before Jesus Christ was crucified, Asa went into the underworld. Same thing. And that was not religion. It was an expression. And even before that, again, the sun sank in the west, and not in the west alone. At the 21st day of December, it had a specific connection with the Southern Cross. That is where it went into darkness for 3 days and 3 nights. That's the sun. It does that. It will soon do that. You comprehend even again from the Virgin to the Scale, to the Scorpio, to Sagittarius, to the Capricorn, which is the unicorn. The full cycle of the zodiac belt explains the sufferation of the sun. That's why in the book of Gates, it speaks about Ra going through the 12th hour of the night, and Ra was getting old and dribbling, moving from one throne to the other throne, going into the underworld to be replaced by the risen Heru. Wow, to be replaced by the risen Horus, which shows you now we're talking about reincarnation in many aspects when it comes to resurrection. This is a deep philosophy. We all resurrect, all of us, because we all reincarnate, you see. But you see, the history and the prophecy now shows that there is an event, a time in space, where specific things were taking place on the planet. And the peak and the climax of that would have been total annihilation, maybe of even the human race. You see how all the dinosaurs that they say were around here are around here no more. You see, in the same way you have endangered animal and extinct species, and even when a species is extinct, you still may have a few remaining, but technically it's extinct. Mankind was on the way or at the brink of that before they stepped into World War II. I use this as the simple example. Someone was questioning the validity of me saying that Hitler was using his concentration camps where he had Black people, skinning people and making boots. Now, as I said in my humble defense, it was a humble defense, that I would have read that information in a book that I would not have come across for some time since that time. But lo and behold, as the old people would say, lo and behold, I was watching a documentary now. I think it was on that channel, Best Documentaries, because they have a lot of Hitler documentaries. I think they make more documentary of Hitler than anybody else. I mean, what's up with that? They make more documentaries of Adolf Hitler every day, every single day. I am positive a documentary comes out on Adolf Hitler. I'm telling you. But anyway, watching the documentary, I said, look here, highlighting the same thing, that Mr. Hitler would have taken the skin, they didn't say Black people in this one, of the prisoners to make boots. But yet still, from our own Black documentaries, we already know that there were Black people in Germany that were suffering under the hands of the Nazi as well. So I'm not trying to bring nothing to the forefront that I would not have heard from qualified sources and credible, what we want to call credible experts in the field. You understand? So all I'm saying is, family, just imagine if you're dealing with a killer like that, Mussolini, Graziani, we have to comprehend that what history is showing us is that Africa was totally colonized. Remember, it was just one more spot to get, and it was Ethiopia. I mean, we just have to wrap our head around that. Nobody can deny this. Who is denying this? Which one of you, whatever religion you are, whether you believe Jesus died and resurrected, whether you believe that all the Black people that came from Africa to the West were Israelites and none of them were Africans because the Africans sold the Israelites into captivity on the west coast of Africa. I mean, that is one of the, I mean, that is, come on, man, who made that stuff up? I mean, give me, and then you're going to say that you have the different tribes. People from Puerto Rico is the tribe of this, and people from Haiti is the tribe of Levi, and the people from Jamaica is the tribe of Benjamin, and the people from Manhattan is the tribe of Judah. Who make that stuff up? Who make that stuff up? And you do not want to associate with your African brother, but you would associate with someone that is definitely not African. And we're not here to judge no one's race, you know? But when you can take on to yourself a brotherhood of what people may call Latino then, and of course we know the different shades and ethnicity within the Latino thing, don't get me wrong, and they are our brothers. I'm not into none of that. I'm not separating or fighting no one. But you are the one that are saying you are not associating with Africans. And you are African too. You just don't know that. Even though you realize you're an Israelite, you're still handicapped because you forgot that you are an African. So, and I'm purposely pulling all these people out because all of what I am saying is just the truth. This is no religion, no makeup. This is just the truth. Africa went under the grip of colonialism, and Menelik II, Emperor Tuardos II, Emperor Johannes IV, and of course those prior to them, and of course their soldiers, Ras Aluha, and Ras Kassa, and the Ras Mokenens of that time, and the Tekla Hymenautes, and all the great warriors that would have stood up with these great kings. Menelik II and Empress Taitu and the Battle of Adwa. This is where we held firm to our independence. This is why when Kadamawe Haile Selassie I came on the scene now, Africa was totally colonialized and Ethiopia was still free. And he now, Haile Selassie I, was the one that had to face the greatest test of anyone. And let me be clear here, no one, none of these historical characters, even those emperors that I just mentioned, with all respect to even Menelik the second, that invasion of Ethiopia by Mussolini, if Haile Selassie I was not the emperor and someone else was in his stead, the outcome would have never been the same. Anyone that's a true historian knows that. The historians that study the decision that was made by the emperor, a decision that he was scorned for. Listen, family, we just begin, you know. I told you that you got to be in for the long haul with me with this one. Because I have a lecture that was done, a presentation that was done not too long ago as it relates to the exile of Haile Selassie. And I want you to listen to the information that the presenter was giving in that presentation as it relates to the hardship that Haile Selassie had to bear as he was going through that time in exile. Follow me good. So I'm showing you that Italy, when it invaded Ethiopia, the mindset was not just of Italy, but of Europe to lock down Africa because we already conquered the rest. And this little spot has been giving us trouble for hundreds of years. Menelik II, Theodoros II, Johannes IV. Now we have Selassie I. Come on, man, we got to stop it now. Let's get rid of him and lock down the empire. And keep in mind, even during the absence of Haile Selassie when he went to the League of Nations, to speak to the government there at Geneva, or the gathering of the governments at Geneva. Keep in mind, the battle was never lost. We never lost the battle. The war was raging on until we won in 1941. Keep that in mind. That's very important. Ethiopia never lost its independence. It was just a hard-fought struggle. And we were definitely the underdog, as they would use the term, but became the overlion. See? So, again, Ethiopia's destiny was the destiny of all Black people. Man, write that down in your notebook. Ethiopia's destiny was the destiny of all Black people. Haile Selassie's destiny was the destiny of Ethiopia. Yeah. Many people died on the battlefield, I agree. But if the emperor was hurt, that would have been the end of it. Haile Selassie's destiny is the destiny of Ethiopia, and Ethiopia's destiny was the destiny of all Black people, and that was the destiny of the planet that we were on. Because when you have maniacs like Mussolini and Hitler, boots with Black people's skin, just think about this. And if they came and brought colonialism full covering Africa from Cape to Cairo, including Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa, that's it. That was it. You have to keep in mind that this is a real resurrection, because when Haile Selassie returned to Ethiopia and established Ethiopia again according to Psalms 87, what did we see? We saw the independence of other African countries, from the Togo to the Ghana and the Ivory Coast. And keep in mind that these Caribbean islands that celebrate independence, in fact, just the concept of independence really began with Haile Selassie I. The breaking of the colonial barriers began with Haile Selassie I. Again, if Mussolini and Hitler won that war, all you have to do is just imagine what kind of world we would be living in. People cannot comprehend, it seems like, how important Haile Selassie I is to the reality of the world we live today. Now, this is not religion, so nobody jump up and say, well, this is not no heaven we're living in and perfect. And it ain't about heaven and perfect. What you talking about? I said, if Ethiopia would have won that war, listen, I remember when I was young, they had this movie. I think the movie was called The End of the World. And in the end of the movie, I had two fellas remaining, and they had on like some gas masks with the long snout, like an elephant, and the goggles. And they were aiming at each other, and I think they shot each other, and the two of them dropped down dead. That's the name of the movie, The End of the World. The sky was red and everything. If Mussolini and Hitler would have had their way, and Ethiopia would have been defeated, not even the white race would have survived. These killers cannot run anything. It is Haile Selassie the first presence up until the 70s that would have stabilized this planet. When you hear them talk about, well, you know, we got to, you know, denuclearize this country and no nuclear energy and rah, 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 who you think brought that talk to the UN? Who is the peacemaker? We know that. And I'm speaking historically now. The individual that went between Morocco and Algeria, the war in Biafra, and in the Congo, the fighting you have in the Congo today, if you understand your history, Haile Selassie I, they're not going to tell you this, would have stopped many battles that were taking place in Africa. Remember, the documentary clearly said that he brought peace to Africa. Africans showed the world how to make peace amongst themselves. Haile Selassie. I'm talking after the war, you know, after the crucifixion, after World War II, in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s. That's what I'm talking about. Just imagine if Ethiopia wasn't there to play such a role. But then again, if Ethiopia wasn't there, we wouldn't have the Organization of African Unity. We wouldn't have these African countries getting their independence. It would be a different world, Rastafari. That is what I'm trying to show to you. So just like the Atlas now, when you see the Atlas, Atlas has the world, carrying the world on his back. Some have Atlas carrying the universe on his back, but it's in a globe form. Atlas is the Greek god that symbolizes the coming of the Messiah, and he's carrying the world on his back. That's Haile Selassie the first when he appeared before the League of Nations. I can give you all the prophecy from Zephaniah to Joel when he said he shall gather all nations together to pour his anger and his wrath on them in the valley of decision, the valley of Jehoshaphat. All the League of Nations, European countries were in the League of Nations, and their representative, and the first time a head of state spoke to that so-called august body was in June 1936, the 30th day thereof, and he came with a two-edged sword in his mouth to smite the enemy, as Zephaniah said he would do, chapter 3, verse 10. And he spoke to them with a pure language from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, according to the Bible. Who can deny these prophecies? Don't just pick what you want out of the book because it sounds like it satisfies you. Let's look at reality here. So when the Christ went into the underworld now, because this is the Christ, this is the Lion of Judah. Who you have as the Lion of Judah? Don't give me no make-believe character. Don't show me no artist rendition of no gray-headed fella. Eh? This is the picture of the God himself. You can even see the God compared to the artist rendition of thousands of years ago. Hmm? Those of you who are watching, you think it's two pictures of Haile Selassie you're looking at, eh? Which one is it? Which one? It's not. Wait, I thought it's two Haile Selassie photos. So which one is the real Haile Selassie? One is Christ and one is Haile Selassie. One is a true Ethiopian rendition of Christ, and the other one is Emperor Haile Selassie first. This is what we're saying here. So I'm sure you know when the Christ of the Bible went into the underworld again, it is Haile Selassie going into the Amenta. That is why the Christ bore 5 bleeding wounds. And Haile Selassie, the 5th of May, 1936 is when he left Ethiopia. The 5th of May, exactly 5 years, 41, went back on the throne. That's 5 years, exactly. The 5th day of the 5th month, all 5. 5 is the number of grace. That's why you see us with the black 5-point star. And the Christ figure bore 5 bleeding wounds. A beautiful allegory. But let's look at the reality now. Let's look at it in flesh. Let's look at the dynamics of history in front of us that we can see on the television. Pictures were taken of the king standing on the bomb. Those that did not explore, we can see him standing before the same League of Nations and bringing that body to an end, like literally destroying it. That's what the reporters said. The League was dead. The League was dead. Keep in mind, you may be saying, well, he just have to do what he have to do. If he didn't do that, you wouldn't even be able to say he have to do what he have to do. That is my point. We need to comprehend this. The Atlas carrying the world on his back. Hey, listen. I want to present, I hope everyone is blessed. As I said, I already told you from the beginning, this is going to take some time. Now, what I want to do is to present to you a lecture, more like a webinar that was done some time ago. And it is taken from the Bath Royal Literary and Scientific Institute. And the presenter is highlighting the Emperor in Exile, the inside story of his, as he say, enforced stay in Bath. Of course, some of his sentiments I'm not totally in agreement with. In general, it's quite a clean presentation, I must say, and quite scholarly. But of course, ones have their own opinion. It may not be in any sort of devious or with any sinister intention, but because we don't really realize the divinity that's amongst us, we tend to say anything like the story of his enforced stay in Bath. Yeah.
Of Bath, there's a Theatre Royal, the Royal Crescent. He may be aware that Louis XVIII spent a little time in exile here, and Napoleon III. And he had a good welcome from the people of Bath, who were outraged at what Italy, the fascist Italy, had done. And so they took him to his heart. The emperor was running out of cash. It was very expensive with his entourage staying in hotels. And it was becoming clear he wasn't going to get back to Ethiopia anytime soon. So his advisors advised him to buy a property. And because of his connections with Bath, the first visit had gone well. He decided to come back and look for a property here. It was far enough away from London not to be on the doorstep of the British government, but it was near enough to get there by train if you wanted to do some under the sort of counter politicking. And so, and of course, property was cheaper here. And this was the property that the emperor came to see and bought. This is Fairfield House on the western outskirts of Bath on the Kelston Road. It was bought for the princely sum of £3,500, a bargain. Probably around £250,000 in today's money, still a bargain. But it had enough rooms for his family and some of his entourage, some of his advisors, some priests, cook, a butler, and it was a lovely Italianate villa from around 1850 or so. It belonged to the widow of the Lord Mayor of Belfast, so sort of quite a reputable property. And so he moved in with quite a few of his children and grandchildren. Here they are, some of his children here, some of the grandchildren here. Here's Rosa the dog. The emperor loved animals, especially dogs, but he loved horses and lions as well. And after the tumult and problems that he encountered at home with the Italian invasion, it must have been a relief to be able to put down a few roots and have most of his family around with him. And to some extent, it was a family house. One of his sons, McConnon, loved tearing around the grounds on his bike. The emperor himself liked playing tennis, and they played tennis there as well. So as well as being the family house, though, of course, it was the seat of the government in exile. Here is a tapestry based on a photograph of the emperor next to Sylvia Pankhurst of the sort of suffragette Pankhurst family. It was taken by the then 8-year-old Richard Pankhurst, Sylvia's son. And that's partly why it's at an angle and it's pointing upwards. And this is quite an important photograph. Sylvia came to give him her support. Although she was against the idea of monarchy, her partner was an Italian opponent of the fascist regime, and she was very keen on fighting for international justice. So she took up the emperor's cause. And many other people came to see him here at Fairfield House, members of the French resistance, some Ethiopian exiles, other people campaigning against Italy. And in the grounds of the house at that stage, there was a coach house where his foreign minister, who'd come with him in exile, he was also there as well. Haile Selassie's cousin, Ras Kassa, a very important official in Ethiopia, he was also around. So there was a lot of letter writing, a lot of contacts, both with Ethiopian exiles in here and across the world, but also with the rebels back in Ethiopia, who were still fighting the Italian occupation. During his time in the UK, he didn't just stay in Bath. He traveled quite a bit around the UK, as you can see from these places that I've marked here. For example, he went to here, Ludlow and Knighton, to see actually the house of the explorer Wilfred Thesiger, who he'd struck a relationship with and was a good friend. So he visited other friends and contacts around the country. He went to do some politicking under the radar. He went to Cambridge and spoke at the Union there, where the students were very enthusiastic, wore pink carnations in their lapels and cheered the emperor to the hilt. And he also went to various schools where some of his children and grandchildren were. He went right down to Penzance here, where one of his granddaughters was. He went here to Malvern, where two other granddaughters went to Clarendon School. Clarendon School is now associated with Monkton Combe School, which has a good link with the Emperor's family, because the son of Ras Kassa, so a close relative of the Emperor, also went to Monkton Combe School as well. So all these links were established here. And of course, he visited here. He went to stays just for a bit of Arara, Weston-super-Mare, and other places like that. But Bath, of course, was his main base. And he was spotted walking in the vicinity of the Crescent and Marlborough buildings. He would walk with his dog. He would go out to sort of take letters to the post. He was very polite when greeted. So on the face of it, you thought, well, not a bad place to be, Bath, maybe. But of course, any exile experience is a very tough one. The emperor himself wrote an autobiography while he was here, which was published much later. And he said in that, life was very hard. Why was life very hard? Well, partly the climate, partly the food is different, partly the traditions and the culture is different, and all that sort of thing. Also, it was hard because the emperor was running out of cash, and so it was very hard even to pay bills like the fuel bills and electricity bills, and to meet the demands of...
I wanted to hear clearly what is being said here. We have some other footage that I want to cover, but hear that properly. Now, of course, the detractors are going to say, oh, well, if he's the Almighty God, no, family, please. We're not talking religion here. We're talking reality here. You lose the religion stuff for a while. Just think of reality. You understand? The reality is true theology is reality, you know, and true theology seems to get mixed up with religion sometimes because maybe, you know, they have similar sources, etc. But true theology is not religion. This is true theology, but for the moment, let's just deal with the historical accuracy. Listen.
Life very hard. Well, partly the climate, partly the food is different, partly the traditions and the culture is different, and all that sort of thing. Also, it was hard because the emperor was running out of cash, and so it was very hard even to pay bills like the fuel bills and electricity bills, and to meet the demands of exiles and keeping the sort of government in exile on the road. So he was always strapped financially for cash, so that was hard as well. But the hardest thing, of course, about being in exile is being away from your own home and not being able to be there. Dante himself talked about having to taste someone else's bread, which is very salty, having to walk up someone else's stairs to go to sleep. So very tough. But on top of that, the emperor had an extra burden on his shoulders. Some of his own people had accused him of cowardice in leaving Ethiopia to come and try and speak to the League of Nations. That, of course, was he was not a coward. It was actually a positive, constructive thing to do. But that was still weighing on him heavily. And even worse, of course, was the news coming out of Ethiopia. Although he was in Bath for 4 years, from 36 to 40, he was well aware of the problems that were still going on in Ethiopia. This is his palace, which he built in 1935. So he moved into that just before he came to Bath. But after the Italians marched into Addis Ababa, they established a base there. So it was full of Italian soldiers and administrators. And in 1937, in the sort of late winter of 1937, there was a big gathering at the palace here. About 3,000 poor people from Ethiopia were gathered because the viceroy at the time, Graziani, was going to distribute charity to them as a sort of way of saying, yes, I'm in charge of this country, but I am looking after the sort of...
This is in Ethiopia, and as you say, in the viceroy, 37, I think that's February 37, the viceroy at the time, Graziani, Rudolph Graziani, the slayer of Addis Ababa. You know, he slayed thousands of Ethiopians that day because somebody tried to take him out. And that's where he got the name, the Slayer, or the Butcher of Ethiopia, the Slayer of Addis Ababa. So it was, I think the next year they came out with the whole story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I mean, we have that is well documented on our short documentary film, which is the Santa Claus Massacre. You know, I think, did we put the Santa Claus Massacre in the international film festivals? I don't hear nobody saying that that's getting any award, but I don't think they would do like the Santa Claus Massacre. So Rudolph Graziani is Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. Yeah, little old cuddly Rudolph with his nose so bright. Won't you guide my sleigh? Guide my sleigh, the Slayer, Rudolph the Slayer. That's the man name, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is about 2 years after him, 37 or 38, I think it was. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer came out. It's all documented in the Santa Claus Massacre. You check it. You check it. Because Rudolph led the sleigh. Graziani is the viceroy. He was the one leading the stuff. It's Graziani, De Bono, and what's the other killer? The Bagdalio. These are Mussolini's 3 main generals. And Rudolph led this sleigh first. Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you kill all of these Ethiopians for me in February 1970, 37? Won't you guide my sleigh tonight, eh? Then all the reindeer loved him as they shouted out air.
Poor and dispossessed. Check out the palace here. About 3,000 poor people from Ethiopia were gathered because the viceroy at the time, Graziani, was going to distribute charity to them as a sort of way of saying, yes, I'm in charge of this country, but I am looking after the sort of poor and dispossessed. At that time, 2 rebels tried to assassinate him by throwing grenades at him. He wasn't killed, though he was quite badly injured. But in the melee afterwards, the black shirts went on a rampage and shot many of the people who were attending that event. And a few days afterwards, they gathered here at the Italian black shirt headquarters, the Casa Littoria in Addis Ababa, in the Piazza area, and hatched a terrible plot to gain their revenge for what they saw as the attack on Graziani. And they basically rampaged through the city for several days, using flamethrowers, burning down properties, raping and pillaging and stealing. And this was a sort of very black day in Ethiopia's history, and there's still a monument there portraying the suffering of the Ethiopian people. It's estimated that at least 19,000 Ethiopians were killed during this rampage. And of course, news of this was filtering back to the emperor at Fairfield House on the Kelstrom Road. What tremendous pain this must have caused for him and his family and entourage. Worse was to follow in the days ahead. He also heard that his son-in-law, Rastesta, who was the last remaining commander of the official forces, had been captured and summarily shot and killed by the fascist occupiers. So yet more tragedy for the emperor to try and keep a brave face going. As a result, it's clear that the emperor in 1937 and 38 was in a very difficult position.
You understand what he's saying again? We are looking at reality here. You see, whether you are Rastafari or not, you already have this thought. What was the right term? This what? Predisposition that Haile Selassie is God. You could be a Christian, you could be a Muslim, you could be a Hebrew Israelite. You don't believe in nothing, but what you know is Selassie Rastafari. That's the Rasta man, because many would not even have taken the time to look at Haile Selassie on a human level, even those that disbelieve. And that is why sometimes I have to even stop brothers and say, hey, hold on. I know you don't agree with me, but you don't have to be that disrespectful to the king. The king, the king was an Orthodox Christian. Listen, so it's all right. Take your time. If you're vexed with somebody, vex with me. You can't be vexed with the king. The king never say he's God. This is me talking to, and it's just reality. We understand that, don't we? But then now ones will say, well, Rastaman, the king did say he was God, because when he came to Jamaica, he said, warriors, priests, and traitors, I am he. Fair enough. And to me personally, to be crowned King of Kings and Lion of Judah and accept all these titles, to me, that's good enough as accepting it, me personally. But what I'm trying to say, and there's a reason why I'm taking my time in the conversation on this level. As I said, this is not a conversation for those who, the video too long. Well, if it's too long, I'll see you later, Give thanks for those who are still here and who have been here, those who came in halfway and say, hey, when this done, I'm going to start it from the beginning. Enough respect. And since I did that, thumbs up the video, share the link. This is what we need to do. This sort of knowledge, which is the real knowledge, because this is what Christ wants us to do, spread the gospel to the four winds of the earth. So if you're not saying it and you're listening and you're saying, man, this is what the world needs. Okay, good, fair enough. Well, that means my job is done. You can take the message now and spread it to the world too. How about that? Yeah, everyone here listening can share it, Everyone can share it. Everyone has WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, the other stuff and the other stuff and this stuff here. Everyone can email it. Everyone can share the link. And you can press them thumbs up stuff so you can reach where it's supposed to go, according to the algorithm. They make up so many rules and all this stuff for us to follow. When we look at this, look at the emperor. Again, because you come with this position or disposition, whatever it is, that Selassie is God. So when you hear all of that, well, you know he was broke. He ran out of money. He wasn't getting the help he wanted from the king of Eagle. You're not impressed. No, I'm not impressed. This is the God? I'm not impressed. Well, this is what I'm trying to show you. And yes, that is the God. But you see, your concept of God is already wrong. And I can't be upset with you because the fact that we're saying God alone, just the fact that we're using the term God, that alone comes with so many different confusion there, different levels of, yeah, that's disposing us. So when you look at the understanding of reality, as this man here said a moment ago, that he had something else that was on his shoulder. People said he was a coward and he ran away. And he, the narrator now, I guess looking back would say, but that was like the wisest thing to do. Again, family, when you understand the heart of Haile Selassie, this man just explained again that the emperor didn't have any finance at a certain time. We didn't go to England to vacate. In fact, we didn't leave to go to England, actually. I wonder if you understand what happened here. We went to Geneva to address the League of Nations because we've been sending envoys. We were on the battlefield. That was us. We had no intention of going anywhere. What's going on up there? Well, England and France, they're not bothering us. I don't understand. Your Majesty, you need to go and talk to them. Go and read the book, The Mission. It's not in this, but it's in The Mission. What's his name? Hans Lockhart. Even though the vote was overwhelming to go for the emperor to go into exile, the emperor still said that he wasn't going into exile. Can you imagine that? They voted on it. It was, I think, 21-3, the vote. So according to that book, I would assume the emperor was one of those that voted against it. It's a mystic meditation. And according to that same book, it's when he returned to the palace that Mama Menin would have said, no, this is the decision that must be made. So Hans Lockhart and The Mission and some of these characters that have written these books on the emperor, sometimes you have to take what they say with a grain of salt because this is the emperor himself, his autobiography. This is the word of the Almighty, the autobiography. And of course, we have a certain level of confidence in even ones like Harold G. Marcus just because of the expertise and the scholarship that they put down. For those who are serious about this knowledge I'm talking about, for those who want to investigate and do their own research and don't just sit down and click on videos and hear what this man saying and hear what this man rambling about and, oh, this video too long. And no, you got to come better than that. No, you gotta come better than that. So I'm trying to bring you to the reality of Haile Selassie. This is a couple of weeks after he got into an accident. The man is going to mention it. An accident in a taxi. He was in a taxi. The emperor does not ride in taxis. And it's for you to comprehend the levels that the emperor came to. He didn't go to Geneva to stay in England. But the whole world turned their back on the King of Kings. Yeah. That is why he was a member of the League of Nations, so the world wouldn't turn their back on the King of Kings. From the moment Musolini smelled as if he was coming in Ethiopia, they're supposed to just lock him up. Nobody should have had to even raise a gun against him. But they came in and they battled for almost a year. And the king had to go to the government of the world to tell them what's going on. Where's the assistance you all promised me according to the protocol? Where's the this? Where's the that? Where's the money? What's going on? Well, okay. Well, we didn't expect you to come here, but tell you what, we're going to vote on this stuff since you're here. Just give us about a week or two. A week or two? Okay, I'll stay in Switzerland. No, we don't want him here. He can't stay in Switzerland. He cannot stay in Switzerland. You don't even know that. Some of you. Let's continue. Give thanks for your patience.
Was in a very difficult position and tried to keep his spirits up. Here he is, though, on a trip to Brighton in early 1938. Note he's with just people sitting as a commoner in a sense. He's in a deck chair for 2p. This is the man who sat on the Solomonic throne, 225th in line. Here he is now reduced to sitting in a common or garden deck chair on the pier at Brighton. So this was really, really tough and very hard to take. He'd also injured his collarbone, knee a few weeks earlier in a road accident in London. His wife, for instance, Menem, couldn't stand the winter, and she'd gone to Jerusalem for a while to escape, and that went. So he was more on his own. And so this was a really tough period. Note that he's also now sort of adopting more of a Western dress. In the picture I showed you with his family, he was in an Ethiopian shawl. Here he is now complete in British garb. I'm not sure what the book is that he's holding there. And a little while later, he goes to the Isle of Wight and now the flat cap, a sort of more working man's British headwear. And the local paper actually is as bold as to say that the emperor's suffering from depression. We don't know literally officially whether that was true, but it's interesting that they were able to say that because it was he was in the depths of despair here. That's without doubt.
What he said is that the papers were saying that the emperor was suffering from depression. Now he's saying, well, that cannot be, verified, but it was obvious that he was in a sea of despair. Yeah. So not because he's in a sea of despair, meaning he's suffering from depression. Yeah, somebody may hit you hard, but that don't mean you feel the pain. So because the strength of the emperor, because even him, the presenter, somewhere in this presentation said the emperor was wondering if he was going to ever return home. That is not true. That is not true, my brother, with all due respect to you. No, that is not true. You read the autobiography. The emperor said he never gave up hope. I mean, that wasn't even a thought. He only think about that when people ask him that kind of foolishness. In fact, on the train to Winnipeg, when he was interviewed by Bill McNeil, for those of you who listened to that interview, remember when Bill McNeil asked him, all your years in exile, Your Majesty, did you ever give up hope that you would have returned to Ethiopia? And the emperor, before he finished asked the question, the emperor said, never. At any time, will we give up hope. And we continue the struggle because we have big hope. I think that's what he said. Yeah, but that's the way he said, never. At any time. Never. So, that, as I said earlier, sometimes it may not be purposely, sinister, but because one may not see the divinity of the emperor, we tend to say the whole thing. Like he was wondering if he would have ever returned.
I know I spoke to one of his grandsons who told me that he was at a very low ebb during his exile in Bath. And this was one of the worst periods. And it actually got much worse. This, believe it or not, is an extract from the emperor's first income tax return.
But listen to this now. Hear that? Hear that? Now, first of all, you have to first put this in perspective. Number one, Haile Selassie. He should not even be going through this. Just the office he holds, he should not go through that. Number one. Well, yeah, everybody goes through something. All right, fair enough. Now, I can tell you this is the Almighty in flesh. He definitely not supposed to go through this only because the prophecy said that. But let's just keep it on that humanistic level as such. So now, why is he paying income tax?
The year 1939-40. This is stored at the National Archives in Kew. Why was he paying income tax? Well, before this period. When he first arrived, he was viewed as head of state by the British government. But in 1938, the British government flipped and decided to recognize Victor Emmanuel III, King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy, as the rightful head of state.
No, you see? So after a while, I think when they annexed Ethiopia according to the UN, so all of a sudden they didn't see Haile Selassie as the king of Ethiopia. They started to recognize King Emmanuel as the king of Ethiopia. Who? King Emmanuel. And that's what the records say historically, you know. Most people in Ethiopia do not recognize that, but in some parts of the world, King Emmanuel would have ruled Ethiopia when the king was in exile. So when Haile Selassie was in exile, the king of Ethiopia was King Emmanuel. What? Yeah, I purposely said so because I did a whole program on this, trying to show people the mistakes. That's why I say you got to be careful what you show people. And you go and watch the video and read the comments. People say, you crazy. You just wacky with your thoughts and rah, rah, rah. King Victor Emmanuel III, who is the king of Italy. So Mussolini is the governor or whatever he was. And Italy had a king at the time, Victor Emmanuel, the last king, because all the thrones were cast down and the Ancient of Days did sit. So, you know, fairy tale religion, you know, this is so real. That's why I don't have time to waste with all these extra talkers. You understand? Yeah. So Victor Emmanuel III was the person that a lot of the European nations, including England, would have recognized. You know, I'm just saying that it's interesting that in the king's absence, the ruler of Ethiopia was King Emmanuel. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's continue. Victor Emmanuel III, by the way.
Why was he paying income tax? Well, before this period, when he first arrived, he was viewed as head of state by the British government. But in 1938, the British government flipped and decided to recognize Victor Emmanuel III, King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy, as the rightful head of state of Ethiopia. They changed their policy, and as a result, the emperor was then, among other things, subject to income tax. So he had to pay some income tax, yet another sort of lack of hospitality, you might say, by the British government, which was not just politics, but I've seen sort of evidence among one or two individuals of sort of downright racism as well, which doesn't really do the British government at the time much favors. So this was the state in which the emperor was after these years, wondering whether he would ever get back to Ethiopia. Was he finished? Well, there may have been one sign.
That's it. This is what the state where he was wondering if he was going to ever get back to Ethiopia. Was he finished? I would disagree with that. Never at any time. Now, I want to just revisit quickly something I would have touched upon on another program. This is all courtesy of Footsteps of the Emperor, with respect to Brother Benjamin Zephaniah for such production. And of course, you know, this documentary really highlights the time that Haile Selassie spent in bath. You know, dip your robes in the blood of the Lamb. It's in the bath, eh? Yeah. Time the king spent in bath in Fairfield's villa. And you're going to hear from individuals who at this time were adults, but at the time of the emperor's visit to London and England in general, they stay at Bath, they were young. So you're going to hear from the lady who was the child of the people that ran the cinema, where the emperor would go and watch, you know, films of the war. And then you're going to hear from the nanny, who was a young teenager at the time when they were in Bath. And let's listen to their account of what they can remember.
I have a memory where the Italians are there in their tank with their military, with their then up-to-date military equipment. and the Ethiopians are there with their spears and their horses. And there was a sense that there is no way that they're going to be able to combat that mechanistic sort of force. And although as a child, I couldn't quite take this on board, I could imagine now as an adult how desperate the emperor must have felt. I mean, so much courage, so much bravery, and so little ability, really, to defend yourself.
They had a rather magnificent radiogram.
You get that. So she's looking at it from that humanistic level. Her parents ran the theater, and the emperor would come and watch the war, and she hear all the noise, and as a little child, she couldn't really pick it up, but now as an adult, she can see like, wow, how courageous the emperor was. And with hear what she says, little ability. He just couldn't do nothing about it. Well, I mean, he's God, and you still talking about that? Let's continue.
They had a rather magnificent radiogram.
They had a rather magnificent radiogram.
And someone put on a record.
Someone put on a record.
And immediately the whole place got into the sounds of what I presumed must be a battle, because there was gunfire, there was shouting, there was yelling, there was tremendous noise and racket. And it went on and it went on, and everybody looked so solemn, and I glanced round and everywhere here was looking very solemn. Now the emperor always sat with his hands on his knees like this, very relaxed. And his hands at the back, I'd already noticed, were very badly pocked, because he'd been, at some time the children told me, he'd been in a battle, and the Italians had used mustard gas, and some of it had gone on the back of the emperor's hands. And so he had these quite sizable dents. And I suddenly realized that the tears were rolling down his face and splashing onto these damaged hands. And although I was only 16, I thought that was terribly sad. But it was of great significance, and I think the memory of the emperor's tears will always stay with me.
The memory of the emperor's tears will always stay with me. Now, in the webinar, the presenter said that a few weeks prior to that, the emperor got in an accident. It's right in here. The emperor was on his way to the BBC to give a lecture, to make a speech. It was Christmas Day. I'm talking about the 25th of December, Christmas Day. And at Paddington Station, they caught a taxi, him and those who were with him. And the taxi had an accident where the emperor damaged his knee. And they begged the emperor to go to a doctor, and they went to a specific street. I can't remember, I think it's Almond Street. And the doctor wasn't home. And the emperor said, I have to go and make my presentation. And they went to the BBC, and the emperor gave his speech. I could imagine the emperor in his perfection, not limping, but yet in great pain. Obviously, you fracture your knee. And he said it in the book, and with great pain. we went to the BBC to deliver the speech that was expected of us. It was the 25th day of December, Christmas. And in the speech, paraphrasing, the emperor says that on this day, many of us celebrate the birthday of our Lord, but we tend not to remember. Listen to what Haile Selassie the first said as he spoke in pain in the middle of his exile, just freshly fracturing his knee in a taxi where the King of Kings don't ride in no taxi. And he said that we tend in our celebration to forget the pains that he had to bear for all mankind to go free. Yeah, but what are you telling me? You know, sometimes people don't know where the passion comes from, but come on, man, what are you telling me? You see what the king just go through, maybe because we don't believe in the king. Some of us, we just talking. Some of us, we just yes, I. Some of us, we come into Rasta following our friend. And we just happen to be around these people. I went looking for this. I didn't expect to find this. I just wanted to know the truth. I just wanted God. Since I'm a little youth, I'm begging God to show me who he is. And nobody can tell me, nobody, no one on earth, they don't have no person alive that can tell me that I have not found the true and living God in Emperor Haile Selassie the First. Impossible. They don't have nobody, no human being, Master. So this is why when I sit down now and meditate on what my Almighty went through for me and you, whether you accept it or not, you must feel it. You know, hear what the king tell us in the speech. The king knee fractured as he was speaking from an accident in a vehicle he should never have been in as a God. He shouldn't even be there in exile. He already speak to the League of Nations. All them prophecy done there. And he now, you know, broke. Had to go to Pops to sell him diamonds so he could get money. Not to catch the train back home, but to feed his exiles in Egypt. He had exiles in Sudan. He had exiles in other places, Jerusalem, Kenya, depending on him to take care of them. And of course, all of Ethiopia waiting on this man here that's sitting on the deck in the deck chair for 2 pence with a book in his hand. Do you know why Black people was signing up in Harlem to come and assist Negus and the gas. You know why? Because the book of Malachi said, I shall rise up the prophet Elijah before the dreadful day of the Lord. And he, Elijah, shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and he shall turn the hearts of the children to the fathers, lest I smite them with a curse. You see how deadly this thing is? Is curse the earth, no man. The earth was in trouble, man. The earth, politics, geopolitics, history, culture, life was in trouble. I just tell you about the movie The End of the World with the two last fellas ready to take out one another. That's what Musolini and Hitler, that must have been them, but they would have been dead long before that. Not even the white European world could survive without Haile Selassie. This is what I'm trying to show you. That's no victory for them. That would be a defeat for all living things. That's how detrimental. You just try to think. Know that you understand. Just think what kind of planet it would have been if Ethiopia had bit the dust. Haile Selassie reversed the process, reverse it. Africa was closing in. All the countries gone, closing in, and he stop it. They try again. Menelik stop it, he stop it, and then it started to reverse. That's why the King of Kings got back Eritrea. Even Ethiopia started to get bigger, just to show you. And then Africa started to free up itself. Own flag, own anthem, culture, get a little free up. Just understand it if that was not the case. Remember, they didn't free the slaves because they were nice, you know. And in many cases, they didn't give them independence because they wanted to neither. This is deeper than that. Not only was Haile Selassie assisting and funding the revolution in many parts of Africa, we don't prove that. His grandmother, his granddaughter showed us that. Oh, speaking of his grandmother, come on, tell you the story about his grandmother, no man. When Ras Mokenin left Haile Selassie as a little child with his grandmother, his mother, and went away and came back, she gave him back to Ras Mokenin and went and became a nun. Because she understood who she was taking care of. So Haile Selassie was assisting in the revolution, all in South Africa, Namibia, everywhere, funding Kwame Nkrumah. He gave him that flag to rise. That none of this could happen if Ethiopia was defeated. Impossible. You're on your cellular phone and your TikTok. Listen, impossible. The plan for us was leather boots. Crocodiles would have gotten a break. We would have been the alligator shoes. Yeah. But again, that's why Christ had to suffer and go in the underworld to save humanity. You know, religious thing, this is real history. That's why it took Christ to do that. That's why he had to suffer for that. 5 bleeding wounds he bare for that. The cross. 5th of May to the 5th of May. This is the symbolism in the date so you understand. The 5th month, the 5th day. Cinco de Mayo, Mayo, the watery world, Mary, Maya, under and come out of the water. Like when you pull the chalice, the smoke, go under and come out of the water, because this is symbolic of resurrection. This is the womb as well, because resurrection is reincarnation. So it's deeper than even what we're talking about here. The man went to hell, remember you. England had 3 kings that very same year when the emperor arrived. 3 kings. 3 kings. That same year, England had 3 kings. One after the other, at the visitation of the King of Kings. Because wisdom is found in the simplest of places. So Osiris went into the underworld for 5 years. Remember, Osiris is the one the 72 nations came and bowed down before. The same people that bowed down before him cut him up into articles, 16 pieces. You know the story. And he resurrected, became the constellation of Sahu. All of this Haile Selassie would have showed us in living historical geopolitical flesh. But you see that period that we call exile, Farai, family, we don't give that enough respect. Every time you burn the chalice, you're supposed to think about that. That's why at the Last Supper, before he was crucified, he tell them with the Holy Grail, the bread and the wine, no spliff here now, the bread and the wine, he said, do this every time you eat and drink in remembrance of me and what I'm going to go through for you. Not that every time you partake is a doom and gloom meditation. The point is that it's a meditation. You meditate on the glory of the Christ, the glory of the God, the glory of the universe, the glory of life, which is God, love, nature, all things bright and beautiful. You see. So it is deep when you comprehend again the sacrifice that the Christ pays must have a value to it. And if Haile Selassie, which we already see is the Messiah, I shall rise up Christ, Naman, in the flesh of David, Naman, to sit upon the seat and the throne of David, Naman, in the flesh. The book of Acts talk about that. It's him. This is undeniable. Rastaman teaching you this for decades now. Let's look at it on a deeper level now. So the 5 bleeding wounds is when he went into exile. That is when Michael stood in the breach. That is when Atlas carried the whole world on his back. Yeah. That is when he bore the cross so everyone could go free, even the same Europeans that turned their back on him in the League of Nations. Because again, World War II, a judgment did hit, but it would have been World War done with it if Ethiopia did have bit the dust. Family, I wouldn't even take no more time. If you know your Bible, and you do not know your history, the knowledge of your Bible will become a mystery. And it takes some real eyes to realize the real lies that are amongst us. I'm very thankful for your patient listening and your rapt attention. Watch it again. Share it with a friend. King Emmanuel VII, Adonai God, Jah Rastafari, blessed love.